4 interceptions are, just part of his problem. We're going to see in a moment the other part of his problem. Is what the quarterbacks get paid so much for. Gregory hitting him pretty good.
And Gregory, of course, led the...
Well, hello. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to check out this video. And welcome to the Gridiron. Before I get started, I just want to say thank you so much to everyone out there who's been watching my videos. Thank you. If you could maybe give this video a thumbs up or possibly leave a comment below or maybe even share this video, it would mean so much to me. But anyway, just thank you so much for just taking time out of your day to check out this video. Thank you. Well, the New York Giants. The 1948 season. 24th season in the history of the New York Giants. Was not very good. It was better than the 47 season. 1947, Giants only won 2 games. Well, they got twice as good in 1948. They doubled from 2 wins to 4. They started off good. First game of the season, they beat the Boston Yanks 27-7, and we thought they were off and running. Mom was wrong again, didn't she? The Giants were 1-0, and then they managed to lose 6 out of their next 7 games, and the season was over with by then. Their defense was absolutely atrocious. They averaged giving up over 32 points a game, which back in 1948 is just ungodly. I mean, just to put it mildly. On the 12-game schedule, I think they gave up 28 points one time. 3 times they gave up over 30 points. 2 times they gave up over 40 points. They gave up 52, I believe it was, to the Los Angeles Rams. They gave up 63 points at home to the Chicago Cardinals. I mean, the defense was just ungodly horrible. There was a little bright. Somehow, as bad as their defense was, they managed to come up with 39 interceptions. I mean, so their run defense was not very good. They really weren't very good at running the ball either, the Giants. Their passing game wasn't too bad. There's 2, I'll show you in the team picture, there's 2 gentlemen that joined the Giants in 1948, which would be huge for the Giants going forward, mainly into the 50s once the Giants started getting back on track and all and everything. But it was not their season. It took the 24th season for them to actually have back-to-back losing seasons. From 1925 to 1946, the Giants had 4 losing seasons. So in 22 years, they had 4 losing seasons. So I'll take that. You have 18. Well, it wasn't 18 winning seasons because they had a couple seasons in there. I think they were like 6-6. They were like 500. But you go 22 seasons from 25 to 46, and you only have 4 losing seasons. I'll sign up for that anytime. Well, it took from 1947 and 48 for them to have their first back-to-back losing season. 1949 would be a little bit better. Okay, because they didn't have a losing season. And once the 50s hit, that's when the Giants started getting a little bit better. Unfortunately for the Giants, once 1950 hit, the Cleveland Browns also joined the Eastern Division as well, too. So Giants had the Cleveland Browns to deal with. But 47, 48, and 49, those were the year of the Eagles. The Eagles went back to the championship game. The Eagles were in a championship game with the Chicago Cardinals in 1947. Well, in 1948, they went back to the championship game. It was the Eagles and the Cardinals once again. This time it was in Philadelphia in a snowstorm. The Eagles would prevail 7-0. And then in 1949, the Eagles would go back to the championship once again. And then the Eagles would be done with until they had one more year. 1960, they would go back and they were done with their championship run. But as I said, the Giants were not very good in 1948. So let's take a deep dive, shall we, into the 1948 season of the New York Giants, which just happened to be the 24th season in the history of the New York Giants. All right, the 1948 New York Giants season. The 1948 New York Giants season was the franchise's 24th season in the National Football League. Now, as I said here, I mean, they started off well. They beat the Boston Yanks on the road, 27-7. Offense looked good. Defense looked good. On the road, they get a win, especially against the Boston Yanks, who have given them troubles in the past. Things are looking good. And then I'll tell you what, holy cow. They lost 6 out of the next 7 games, and boom, they were out of it. But as I show you, their defense was just unbelievable, horrible. They gave back-to-back 40 points. Then they gave up 63. They gave up like 150 points in 3 games. I mean, and they gave up 27. They gave up 28 here. And then they gave up 30. Here's the 52 points they gave up to the Rams. They gave up 38 points to the Steelers. I mean, absolutely horrible, the defense. And it was the division. Somehow they wound up like tied for 3rd place. I mean, wow. They could score points. They just gave up so many. But the Eagles were the cream of the crop here. 376 points they scored. They only gave up 156. So they were the best team. But let me show you the team photo from 1948, and I'll point out 2 guys here who wind up being very instrumental in the Giants moving forward, especially going into the 50s. One of them is just near and dear to a lot of Giants' hearts. He was our quarterback, took us through the 50s. He, very good quarterback. I know his rookie season, he set a lot of Giant rookie records as far as throwing the ball and all, which lasted years. He was the first Marlboro man. Very instrumental getting the Giants through the 50s. He was a fantastic quarterback. They put him at number 42. We got him from the Redskins. Good old Charlie Connolly right here. Young Charlie Connolly. All right. Then the other guy, which shame it took so long, but finally broke the ice here, is this gentleman way over here, Mr. Emlyn Tennell, the first black ball player the Giants ever had. I think it was during his Hall of Fame speech. He wanted to thank apparently because he didn't have a car, a driver's license, and all like that. So he hitchhiked his way to New York for a tryout with the Giants. And apparently some guy in a banana truck picked him up and drove him, I guess, to New York City. And during his Hall of Fame speech, he said, "I want to thank the gentleman in the banana truck who picked me up and drove me to New York City for my tryout." But Emlyn Tennell here, I mean, not only obviously the first black ball player in the history of the Giants. Shame it took so long, but it is what it is. But he's a Hall of Famer. I mean, just phenomenal, athlete, phenomenal football player. On defense, he could return punts. He was very good at returning punts. He intercepted a lot. He's number 2 all time as far as intercepting passes in the history of the NFL. The guy who's in first place played I can't remember how many more games than Emlyn did. If Emlyn played as many games as the guy in first place, Emlyn would be number 1 overall as far as interceptions. But those 2 gentlemen would lead the Giants going forward, especially throughout the 50s when the Giants would start getting back on track once again. It's 1947, 48, and even 49. They didn't have a losing record, but they were 500. So, I mean, these last 3 years in the 40s were not very good. Once they got to 1950, things started turning around. Unfortunately, there's the All-American Football Conference, and the Cleveland Browns were in there. After 1949, the All-American Football Conference disbanded, and a couple of the teams from that conference, or that league, shall we say, conference league, joined the NFL, and the Cleveland Browns were one of them, and the Cleveland Browns were very, very good. So it is what it is. But I just wanted to point that out here in this in the team photo. Now I'll show you right here. I mean, this is just some of the, I mean, look at the yards that the Giants gave up on defense. They gave up almost 500 yards to the Redskins, 366. They gave up almost 600 yards to the Cardinals, 400 here, 400 there, almost 400 there. They gave up 400 here, almost 500 here. I mean, my goodness, were they absolutely horrible. Passing, I mean, they weren't that bad. I mean, 24 touchdown passes, over 50% completions. They just goes to show you, I mean, how their running was not very good. They threw the ball almost 363 times, which is a lot back then. They only had 16 interceptions for 24. But you'll notice here on defense, they had 39 interceptions. So, yeah, very, very good. And then you'll notice here the rushing. I mean, they only ran for 3.4 yards. They only ran for 1,200 yards. That's because they were throwing the ball most of the time, because they were giving up 40, 50, 60 points. You can't try to, well, we're down 63-2. Let's establish the run. No, you got to throw the ball. Try to get back in the game. So, but you notice here, I mean, they gave up almost 1,000 more yards rushing. Yeah, so, I mean, their defense was really, really bad. But you'll notice here, all right, defense here. Okay, interceptions. Okay, Emlyn Tunnell was second. He had 7. But I mean, you ain't never going to see this ever again on no Giant team ever. Period, bar none. Just because the way the passing game is nowadays and everything. But this guy had 5. This Emlyn Tunnell, future Hall of Famer, had 7. This guy had 9. He had 5. Then you got 3, 2, 2, 2. You know, a bunch of guys with 1. I said, you'll never see this ever again. Just as I said, the way the accuracy of the quarterbacks, the way they're passing, the rules, the way they are, you'll never see this ever again. 39 interceptions in 12 games. Over 3 interceptions a game. Very, very good. But, I mean, I said, I said, they could score some points. It's just their defense was just unbelievably horrible. All right, then we got. All right. 1948 NFL season. 1948 NFL season was the 29th regular season of the National Football League. During the season, halfback Fred Gurkey painted horns on the Los Angeles Rams helmet, making this the first modern helmet emblem in pro football. Interesting. The last regular season game played on Wednesday until the 2012 season happened on September 22nd, 1948, between the Detroit and Los Angeles. It had a Wednesday game. Wow. The season ended with the Philadelphia Eagles defeated the Chicago Cardinals in the NFL championship game. The 1948 season featured the highest per team scoring in NFL history, with the average team scoring 23.2 points per game. This record stood for 65 years. Wow. Until 2013. Yeah, I did not know that. Wow. All right. The draft. The draft was held on December 19, 1947 at Pittsburgh Fort Pitt Hotel. With the first pick being going to the Washington Redskins, they selected halfback Harry Gilmer from the University of Alabama. There you go. Alabama getting the number 1 overall pick. Plastic helmets were prohibited. This rule was enacted because critics argued that they were being used more as a weapon than protection. Well, I mean, it was like the Wild Wild West back then. You can do all kinds of things back then. Guys getting hurt and all and everything. So, a flexible artificial tee is permitted at kickoff. When the intended passer is tackled behind the line of scrimmage, the game clock will stop temporarily until any receivers who have gone downfield have had a reasonable time to return. Interesting. When the offense is called for delay of game, the defense may decline the 5-yard distance penalty. All right. If a foul occurs behind the line during a backwards pass or fumble, the penalty is enforced from the spot of the pass or fumble. It is illegal to bat or punch. This is where I found a hard time. I mean, Lawrence Taylor would be very pissed off at this rule. It is illegal to bat or punch the ball while it is in a player's possession. Really? No. Okay. All officials are equipped with whistles, not horns. Division races. In the Eastern race, the Eagles demolished Washington 45-0 in Week 5 to take a half a game lead. When the 6-1-1 Eagles met the 6-2 Skins again in Week 10, they beat Washington 42-21 and won the division and the right to host the championship game. The other race was all Chicago. The Cardinals and Bears both had records of 10-1 going into the final week. Thus, there was a de facto playoff game for the Western Division for the second year in succession, with a tie forcing a second playoff game the following week. Record crowd of 51,283 attended Wrigley Field on December 12th for the all-Chicago showdown, with the Bears taking a 21-10 lead on George Golianik's touchdown as the fourth quarter began. Yep, there he is. Is that him? There he is. All right. Charlie Trippi's touchdown cut the margin to 21-17, but the Bears had the ball and time on their side. The turning point came when the Cards' Vince Benonis picked off a pass from Johnny Lujak and ran the ball back to the Bears' 19, and Elmer Angsman scored the winning touchdown 3 plays later for the Western Division title and the trip to the championship game. Wow. Bears had 21-10 lead, could not hold it. But there you go. There's the, they both scored a lot of points, right? The Bears gave up very few. Actually, the Bears gave up the fewest points in the whole league. The Packers were horrible. They scored like the least, 154. The Giants even killed them. It just goes to show you. But the Boston Yanks they scored 174 points. The Steelers didn't score much. They didn't give up much, but they didn't score much. But look at the Giants, 388 points. Actually, somehow the Detroit Lions gave up even more. Let me see what let's see what they gave up here. 40, 40, 40, 50. Oh, 40. Okay. I'm like, the Giants gave up 60. So they go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times they gave up at least 40. They gave up 28, and a 20, and a 34, and 28. Okay. All right. So the Lions gave up more points than the Giants, which I find that hard to believe. All right. Then we got the leaders here. Sammy Baugh was the leader, threw for 2,599 yards. Steve Van Buren from Philadelphia ran for 945 yards. And Mal Kuttner, the Chicago Cardinals, led with 943 receiving yards. The most valuable player went to Pat Harder of the Chicago Cardinals. Coaching changes. All right, we have Detroit Lions. Gus Duras was replaced by Bo McMillan. Los Angeles Rams, Bob Schneider was replaced by Clark Shaughnessy. Pittsburgh Steelers, Jock Sutherland was replaced by John Michelson. Michael Olsen. All right, there you go. There's a name for you. Then we have the championship game. And it was in a snowstorm there, I'll tell you. 1948 championship game was the 16th title game in the National Football League, played at Shibe Park in Philadelphia on December 19th. The game was a rematch of the previous year's title game between the defending champion, the Chicago Cardinals, who were 11-1, of the champions of the Western Division, and the Philadelphia Eagles, 9-2-1, champions of the Eastern Division. The Cardinals were slight favorites at 3.5 points. It was the first NFL championship game to be televised. Due to a heavy snowfall, the ground crew needed the help of players, and I'll show you a picture of this, for both teams to remove the tarp from the field. The opening kickoff was delayed a half an hour until 2 p.m., and 3 extra officials were called into service to assist with out-of-bounds calls. The stadium lights were also turned on for the entire game. The Eagles won their first NFL championship, defeating the Cardinals 7-0 with a final quarter touchdown. It was also the first championship for Philadelphia since 1926, when the Frankfurt Yellow Jackets won the league championship. Just the standings, they had the best overall winning percentage. Okay, then we got the game summary. You see over here, right, there's no scoring until just the first minute, one of the first plays of the fourth quarter. Steve Van Buren ran over for 5 yards, and it was the only touchdown there was. It was basically on a fumble. The Eagles recovered a fumble, I think, on the Chicago 17, and I think 4 plays later they ran it in. The game, also known as the Philly Blizzard, was played in Philadelphia during a significant snowstorm. Burt Bell, the NFL commissioner and former Eagles owner, had considered postponing the game, but the players for both teams wanted to play the game. All right, that's fair. The snow began at daybreak, and by kickoff, the accumulation was 4 inches at a temperature of 27 degrees. The paid attendance for the game was 36,309, but the actual turnout at Shibe Park was only 28,864. That kept about 8,000 people away. It was a scoreless game until early in the fourth quarter, when after Chicago had fumbled in the third quarter, the Eagles recovered it, ran a couple plays to end the third quarter, and then second play or so of the fourth quarter, Steve Van Buren ran it over. After Chicago had fumbled in their own end of the field, the Eagles recovered the fumble that set up Steve Van Buren's 5-yard touchdown run at 1:05 into the fourth quarter. The game ended with the Eagles deep in Chicago territory. Eagles head coach Greasy Neal gave a majority of the credit for the win to the veteran quarterback Tommy Thompson. With only 5 passes completed on 23 attempts for both teams, the game was completed in 2 hours and 2 minutes. Quick game. Well, I guess everything was a run. I guess a lot of it also they couldn't, for the most part, I guess had a hard time running wide. So, I mean, guys couldn't go out of bounds. So that's pretty much every play was a run. And it was inbounds, and the clock just kept running. So 2 hours. That's a fast game. And we got the NFL added the 5th official back judge in 1947. The line judge arrived in 1965, and the side judge in 1978. Player shares. The gross receipts for the game, including radio and television rights, were just under $224,000. Each player of the winning Eagles got only $1,540, which is down from the year past. But it's because of the attendance. If it wasn't a snowstorm and more people showed up, the winning, they would have received more money. But $1,500 back then, the Eagles players would take it. And the Cardinals players, the losing share was 879 players. So we got it. All right. Eagles owner aftermath. Lex Thompson was in the hospital for appendicitis during the game. He sold the team a few weeks after this game to the Happy 100 Syndicate for $250,000, and he died 6 years later of a heart attack at the age of only 43 years old. Wow. The Eagles repeated as champions the following year. They went out to Los Angeles. It was in mud, yeah. The 1948 game was the only time Shibe Park hosted an NFL championship game. As Franklin Field was a site, 1960, and it was the next time the Eagles would host a championship game. And it was played at Franklin Field, and they beat the Packers 17-13. This game was the Cardinals' last appearance in an NFL championship game until Super Bowl, we got 43. In February of 2009, the Cardinals had to beat the Eagles in a championship game to reach the Super Bowl. Yeah, that was a good championship game. I remember that. And the game was the lowest scoring of any NFL championship game, the only one with only one score, and the only one to be won with a single-digit score. It remains the second lowest postseason, the 5-0, when the Cowboys beat the Lions in the Cotton Bowl, 1970, the first round of the playoffs. They won 5-0, had a safety and a field goal. But let me show you this picture here. I show you. See, here's Eagles win National Football League title in driving snowstorm. So, I mean, you can see during the game. I mean, what they did was see under here, this is the tarps. Here's the players, the Cardinals players. The Cardinal player right here pulling the tarp off because they got the tarp on the field and there's like inches of snow on there. You can imagine how heavy that must have been. So the field crew, the players from the Eagles, players from the Cardinals were help pulling the tarp off. So you can see that it's tough to see in black and white, but there's snow on the tarp. But you can see here, see the field right back here is it's clear, right? It's clear. But then you see it as the game goes on, say right here, I mean, the whole field, I mean, it's a bad picture. Here's Steve Van Buren scoring a winning touchdown from 5 yards out. Oddly enough, he's number 5. But you see the field is just covered in snow. So it was snowing before the game. It snowed during the game. But let me show you right here, all the way down at the bottom. Kilroy on the spot. Let me show you right here. Let me open this up here, or make it a little bit bigger. Kilroy on the spot. This is where the game was won or lost, shall we say. First, the Eagles needed a break. Because if you'll see, the Eagles were really outplayed them. I mean, the Cardinals couldn't move the ball at all. The Cardinals had 5 first down. The Eagles had 16. The Eagles, 225 yards rushing. The Cardinals had 96. Eagles completed 2 passes. They completed 3, for 35 yards. The Eagles got 7 yards, right? But, I mean, really, the Eagles had a lot more yards. I mean, they had 130 more yards rushing. They had 11 more first downs. So the Eagles were the better team, right? But they needed a break. First, the Eagles needed a break. And when it did materialize, they needed to make the most of it. Because I don't know if it would have been pretty tough to kick a field goal in those conditions. Held scoreless through 3 periods, the men of Neal waited patiently. Those are the Eagles. It finally came in the closing minute of the third quarter when Maloof, trying to hand off to Charlie Trippi on his own 19, fumbled. Frank Kilroy, the big guard from Temple, playing his 7th year in the professional loop, not in the NFL, in the professional loop, was on the spot to recover for Philadelphia on the Cardinals' 17-yard line. So this is where the drive started, on the 17-yard line, which was the only score in the whole game. Time remained for only 1 play in the third period, and Pritchard, taking a handoff from Thompson after the latter had faked a pitch out to Van Buren, ripped through for 6 yards, okay? Got down to the 11. Then the teams changed sides to start the last 15 minutes. Based on their earlier action, there was little reason to believe that the Eagles would go all the way without the aids of skis or snowshoes. They had been sloshing and slipping in the snow all afternoon. Anyway, it was 2nd down on the Chicago 11 when play was resumed, and Joe Mua, who had done some excellent punting for the Eagles, gained 3 to the 8. On a quarterback, because he gained 3 and the other guy gained 6. It was like 3rd down and 1. Now, if they didn't make it, he took a quarterback sneak. If they didn't make it, I kind of wonder if they would have tried to kick a field goal or not. But let's see, the Eagles gained 3 to 8. On a quarterback sneak, Thompson went for a first down. So he went from the 8 down to the 5. And it was then that Steve Van Buren, former Louisiana State ace, turned the trick. Taking the handoff from Thompson, Van Buren crashed outside his own right tackle and reached the end zone. Right then and there, the Cardinals were beaten. The 28,864 fans who braved the elements to witness this playoff knew it. The Eagles knew it, and the Cardinals knew it. So it was just tough to do anything. Tough to run, tough to pass. It was, obviously it was very difficult to try to, let's see. There weren't too many fumbles. The Eagles had 1, Cardinals had 3. Right. But let's see, the Cardinals had a couple interceptions. The Eagles had 1. So, but it was just tough to go, get the ball and march 80 yards for a touchdown in this type of weather, especially if maybe throwing an interception or getting a fumble or something like that. It was just really, really tough. So that was the only way that the Eagles scored was on a fumble. They recovered it, and they only had to go 17 yards for the one and only touchdown in the whole game, which wound up winning them the championship in the 1948 NFL championship game. But as far as the Giants concerned, 48 was just not their year. 1949, they would get a little bit better. They didn't have a losing season, but once the 50s started rolling around, the Giants, which I mentioned before, they would start getting each year they would start adding another player here, another player there, and by the time the mid-50s rolled around, the Giants were in prime position to go back to the championship games. So you see, 1948, it was a bad year. I mean, you know, they had back-to-back losing seasons, but you know, 1948 they would get back. Not they were 500, 1949, but at least they didn't have a losing season. But once 1950 hit, okay, that's when they got back to their winning ways again. And as the years would go by, they would start adding like a, you know, I mean, this year they added 48. They added Emlyn Tunnell, Charlie Connolly, the quarterback, who'd ride them out through the 50s and into the very early 60s. But then as the 50s started rolling along, they'd add a little guy here and a little guy. You know, they would add a Kyle Rote, then they draft Frank Gifford, and then Sam Huff would come along in 56, you know, and then they'd trade for Andy Robustelli, you know, so they'd start getting guys, and they'd start piecing guys together, and, you know, and before you know it, by the time the mid-50s rolled around, the Giants were going back to the championships games once again, and from 1956 to 1963, in an 8-season span, they went to 6 championship games. So they were things were starting to change, but 1947 and 1948 were not good years for the Giants at all. Well, as always, guys, thank you so much for taking time out of your day to check out this video. You guys stay safe out there and go Giants! Woo!